All right. Hello and welcome everybody to another great episode of Chapter 2. This show, yet again, I have another fantastic sort of world-renowned author, speaker, innovator to come speak on the show. So Jay Samit is a dynamic entrepreneur and intrapreneur, and he's widely recognized as one of the world's leading experts on disruption and innovation. As a former NASDAQ company CEO and independent vice chairman of Deloitte, Jay's helped grow many sort of pre-IPO companies such as LinkedIn. He's had senior management positions in EMI and Sony and Universal Studios, and really sort of pioneered breakthroughs in mobile, robotics, internet advertising, and e-commerce. Honestly, yet again, we just keep having these fantastic individuals who have led extraordinary lives, built companies, entrepreneurs, and have been kind enough to sort of write and share their stories with us. Many of you are probably already familiar with his fantastic book, Disrupt You. I think it's been put into 10 or more languages at this stage. But today we're going to have an even more fun conversation. We're going to talk about future-proofing you. So without further ado, welcome to the show, Jay. How are you doing?
Excellent. Thanks for having me.
Listen, so many of your books have been fantastic for people. Your work is actually just phenomenal in terms of what you're doing in the innovation and disruption space. You've written, I don't know how many books it is at this stage. Is it 6 or 7 almost? So tell us what was inspired you to write this book and what's the big idea behind it?
So when I wrote Disrupt You, my last book, I showed that anybody can become successful. And I mapped out how to do it. And when you're a CEO of a giant company, you get hate mail. Your inbox is, I hate you, I hate the company, I hate this product. That's why CEOs get the money that we do. It's no fun. But when you write a book that changed people's lives, and the book's in over a dozen languages, I've heard from people in 140 countries, it's amazing what I call love letters. I wake up every day to an inbox that this changed my life. I don't do the work, they do it. And I'm writing to help people. I'm not selling anything. There's no upsell here. But I got this one email that said, this was all motivational, but I could never do it. And it was from a millennial, and it ate at me. So I came up with this wacky idea. What if I took somebody that grew up on welfare, in this case, it turned out to be an immigrant, who had no social network, was couch surfing, basically homeless, and I mentored him one day a week for a year. I gave him no capital, introduced him to no contacts, and he had to start a business that took $0. And spoiler alert, he went from homeless to self-made millionaire in less than a year. So future-proofing you maps out the steps and shows that everyone can have success. And we're just not taught how to do it.
Yeah, no, I love these sort of stories and examples. And also you putting your energy into giving back and helping people find their own path, right? I think
the pandemic wiped out the middle class globally. And if you want to have a stable society, you need a middle class. And a middle class means somebody has to be creating jobs. And that's the entrepreneur. Over the next decade, due to automation, AI, robotics, half of all jobs will disappear. There'll be massive disruption. I used to have to argue about disruption, but post-pandemic, everybody now understands it can happen to anyone. So unless we teach people how to have success, and your parents and teachers that wanted to shield you from pain and from failing because they gave up on their dreams, basically put this blinder on your life that you can't achieve. That those people that, I've been partnered with and worked with the Bill Gates and Elon Musk and Steve Jobs and all these people, that somehow they were different, but they weren't. They just looked at the world different.
Yeah, it's fascinating to hear you say this, right? Like in many ways, I think some jobs will disappear, but my belief is that we're actually going to have an explosion of entrepreneurialism, because the ability for a kid to have access to a credit card and spin up an AW instance and potentially bring their product to market with no code or low code platforms is the only thing holding us back is actually ourselves. All the technology is there to make it. It's never been cheaper, faster, easier.
One click away from 5 billion customers. Think about it. Every 32 hours, there's a self-made billionaire. That's with the B. I don't know what you did, Barry, over the weekend, but you're a slacker. So what are they doing? They didn't come from the right families. They didn't come. And what we're now seeing in the pandemic is you don't have to live in a major city or a first world nation. You have the infrastructure's there. There's no gatekeepers to capital. There's no gatekeepers to markets. And it all starts with something that people don't understand. problems. If you have problems in your life, you're halfway there. Entrepreneurs don't sell things, they solve things. No one ever went into a hardware store and wanted to buy a 1/4-inch drill bit. What they wanted was a 1/4-inch hole. They bought the drill book to get the hole. So if you solve a problem for 5 people, you have friends. Solve for 1 million, you make some money. When you solve for 1 billion people, you change history. I mean, the purpose of life is to live that life of purpose. And it is the greatest time in history. And we're going into, and I have a whole chapter in Future Proofing You about a new $1 trillion opportunity that Google's spending tens of billions on, Microsoft spending billions, everybody's spending billions to build the next, what's replacing the iPhone. And yet they're not building the apps. So think about how much the iPhone changed the world. How many fortunes were created by just making very simple apps? Well, we spend 5 hours a day with this phone in our hand. We will no longer do that. We will have heads-up displays for our waking hours. And whoever solves problems there will make a fortune faster than any time in history.
Yeah, and I love this as well. It's one of the reasons we started Nobody Studios, our venture studio, right? Where our goal is to do 100 companies over the next 5 years. We've announced Ray Leonard Jr. as the CEO of one of our on-demand event platforms. Like it's literally explosion of entrepreneurial and opportunity time. I believe with you too as well. I think we're on the verge of like 4 or 5 huge paradigm shifts all arriving together, from machine learning to devices as you're describing, to virtual and augmented realities, and bringing all these worlds together at the same time is, we can make the hardware,
and
but what's going to be the
for the
software?
people that aren't technical, realize for a second that everybody hearing my voice right now has written at least as much code as Steve Jobs. 0, okay? You only need 2 things to be successful: insight and perseverance. I teach you and disrupt you and future proofing you how to find the insight for that business and what steps to take. Perseverance comes from within. But I will tell you, when I took this young man, Vin, who we talk about in Future Proofing You, who grew up where parents were on welfare, he was on welfare, where there was no success. And his first month, when he made more than $50,000, he could have flown to Europe without a plane. He was so motivated. He was on fire. And it all starts with just having that positive mindset. If you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. So, and when you have to understand, this is the big, one of the chapters, there's 12 truths in the book. And one of them is, why you have to embrace failing. A baby doesn't wake up and stand and go, today I shall walk across the room. They get up, they fall, they get up, they fall. But each time they get a little further and they learn, okay? When you play a video game, you hit that impenetrable obstacle and you hammer at it, and you finally make it past it. And guess what? There's another obstacle. Well, that's what your career is. You will fail forward, because when you fail, you don't end up where you started. You either earn or you learn, but either way, you're propelled forward. And you're going to need mentors. And I teach people how to get the mentors for each stage of their life. People want you to succeed. People want to help you. It isn't a zero-sum game where you're all fighting over the same scraps. I mean, that's the big misconception most people have, that I only make money by taking your money. Like, I buy a banana for $1, I sell to you for $2. That's not how wealth is created. If I told you, Barry, which is true, my last company sold for $200 million, I'm starting a new one, and I'll sell you 10% for $10,000. What do I have? I have 10,000 in cash and 90,000 in equity that I can hire people with, buy things with, merge with, that I created out of thin air. Today's millionaires or billionaires are creating wealth. They're not taking wealth. They're expanding the wealth that's out there. They're making society better for everyone. So why wouldn't you want to have that? Why do you show up at a job that just pays you enough to show up but not enough to care, not enough to live a life that you deserve, or take care of your family in a way that you want? I didn't set out to be some entrepreneur. I bought into the get good grades in college and live happily ever after. Graduated in the Depression. There's nobody hiring. And the few jobs that were, if a job exists, by definition, that means somebody else has had it, which means there's people with more experience. Why should anybody ever hire you? But if you do something nobody else is doing, if you're unique, then by definition, you're the best in the world at what you do. And all you have to do is hold on to being the best at that one little thing for as long as you can, and then move on to the next thing.
I know, I love this, right? There's so much to unpack in the stories you're sharing here, like embracing failure, finding mentorship. But this point you're also mentioning a little bit about, like, if you are the best at something in the world, the platforms exist for you to teach the world that. I think it's fantastic. But let me ask you about mentoring, because that's actually comes up quite a lot, right? We have a lot of these talented folks that maybe don't have the environment around them, the opportunity to access people. You've been CEOs of these huge companies, which half of the job is mentoring. What would be your sort of advice? It's obviously in the chapters about helping people find mentorship or.
Sure. So as you know, I work with Reid Hoffman to launch LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a great free resource for finding mentors. You don't email a stranger, you don't email Elon Musk, please be my mentor. First of all, Elon is so far away from when he was one guy living on $30 a month, sleeping under his desk at night, that the steps that he can give you advice for are not the steps you need advice for. I mean, Mark Zuckerberg, as a billionaire, went and got Steve Jobs as a mentor. Okay. Bill Gates's mom begged Bill to reach out to Warren Buffett to show him how to handle this wealth.
Great story. Yeah.
So what you want to do is somebody that's one or two rungs above you. And I teach you how to look through their bio on LinkedIn to see that they're open to it, and how to comment on their things that they're posting, and to build a relationship. You don't just go, hey, be my mentor. That's like walking to a bar and going, hey, have my baby. I don't think that works. Okay. And I need mentors. These aren't people that you're paying to help you. That's not a mentor. These are people that want to share what they've learned. They want to make the world. Mother Teresa had a mentor. I mean, you can find mentors almost anywhere. And it's not just one mentor. Different stages, you'll have different challenges.
Brilliant, yeah.
No one was born knowing these things. So why not shorten your journey by having somebody that's been through part of it?
Yeah, it's such great tips. I think this notion of building a relationship, I can think of a couple of people who've been fabulous for me. Gibson Biddle is Chief Product Officer at Netflix, and Gib has just given me so many great little insights in my life about how to get better at building a business, or ways to think about building products. And again, that all started from just commenting, sharing ideas with one another back and forth, and building the relationship.
100%.
And so it's really great for you to share those like little insights, is that you don't just jump in and go, hey, be my mentor. It's actually, and I often think it's like so much of this is giving back. Like what could I do for Jay? How could I help Jay with something maybe he might not know, or that I might have some expertise about? And you get this reverse sort of mentoring happening.
And I've had people that have reached out that I've met through the book, readers from around the world, that exactly that relationship. I'll give you a great example. A young man reached out from Croatia. Never been to Croatia, don't speak the language, could tell you absolutely nothing about Croatia. But he thought the book would really help other people in his country. I mean, this is a country that, a decade or so ago was, under communist rule. There's not a lot of mentors that have entrepreneurial background. And he said, how do we get this book into our language? I said, you go and find a publisher. Whatever it makes, I'll split with you 50-50. Now you have a business. Okay. And the book's coming out, and it's amazing. This is why it's coming out in France. One of the most successful billion-dollar unicorns that came out of France wrote the intro to it. Everybody wants to help others, because let's face it, if all that entrepreneurs are doing is making life better, why wouldn't we want more people to make the world better? If you think the world's perfect, if there's nothing that could be improved upon, then I can't help you. I really can't. But the simplest thing, the young person I'm obsessed with right now, remember a science project in school where you had to do some like thing? I did the volcano, baking soda and vinegar. That was mine. Okay. A 17-year-old girl looked at the fourth leading cause of death in the US. It wasn't a disease. It was going to a hospital, just being in the hospital, being exposed to infection. Make a long story short, She wanted to know why nobody ever made stitches that change color if the wound's infected. Her parents weren't scientists. Her parents weren't doctors. She played with vegetables and different things on the pH balance, and she solved it. And thank God she understood that you can go out and get patents for dummies and write your own patent. And she's now saving millions of lives, making a fortune, and she hasn't graduated high school. Again, Barry, what a slacker you are. I'm so inspired by this because here's the other thing.
Great.
It's really fun to see memes and little hamsters eating little tacos. But you know what? The internet connects you to all of mankind's knowledge. There's nobody stopping you from learning. And a lot of time when I teach this at the university level, students go, I thought somebody must have already invented this. So I searched and Googled and everything, and I didn't find it. I go, yeah, because nobody took the initiative. But I can guarantee the second you make your first million, you'll hear from 1,000 people who go, oh yeah, I had that idea too. Yeah, what'd you do with it?
Yeah, no, this is fantastic, Jay. I think the inspiration behind the story, helping people, the mentorship, the failing. Is there one other chapter, that you'd love to share with all the readers and listeners out here? Another one that you think is really seminal for you?
So one for people to listen to a lot of podcasts is there's a lot of charlatans that give bad advice. Okay. The reason that I started writing books to begin with was I've sat in an empty room and started a company and turned it into $1 billion. I've also been in big companies. I've seen it from both sides. I've been and most of these people just give advice and haven't lived it. And the biggest thing that just annoys me, and it's one of the 12 truths, it's one of the chapters, is people that tell you that you can overcome fear, right? Fear's all in your head. Fear's not real. There's the different acronyms, whatever they are, okay? Those people are morons. We are hardwired to be fearful, okay? The core of our brain, the oldest part, what's known as the lizard brain, is the fight or flight, okay? You're only here because your great-great-grandfather Ugg in the cave, when he saw the saber-toothed tiger, he ran, okay? You can't get rid of fear, but you know what you can do? You can prioritize fear.
Yeah, manage it, yeah.
Okay, so if you're sitting there worried about, if I start a business, I could fail, I could be embarrassed, I could lose my money, I could lose other people's money, all these reasons, Yep. Go visit a senior center. Go talk to your grandparents and ask them their biggest regret in life. And it won't be something that they failed at. It'll be something that they failed to try. Because if you're afraid to do something, that means you're afraid to live life. And one day you're going to wake up and look old like me with a white beard and go, what did I do? Where did this time go? This amazing gift. The odds of being alive in this universe are such an amazing thing. To take you to the next level isn't that much farther of a walk. By the way, globally, if you make $30,000 a year or more, you're in the top 1%. Let that sink in. So you're on third base, most likely, making it to the home run, not that hard.
Yeah, no, I love this. And it's so funny you mentioned fear. We had Anna Weinberg on the show 2 weeks ago. She wrote a book around psychological safety. And one of the techniques that she recommended and I've committed to is actually writing down my fears every day. What's the things that's scaring me? And it's been so profound to actually review them, to look at them, to prioritize them, and actually find out which are real, which are not real, which have held me back from taking action. And then a week or two later, I'm like, why did I not take action? That didn't matter. It's been a huge breakthrough for me to actually say, the only way to reduce fear is actually to take action, is to test if it's true or not, or all the magic happens when you're doing uncomfortable things. I've never been successful at from just doing things that are comfortable. It's always
By the way, I've yet to meet a hater that's doing better than me. Okay.
Oh, it's so funny.
So I don't know why people are so hung up with what others think or what others do. I mean, I'll tell you a great story. My first company, I was 21. I went to friends, would you invest and everything? Nobody. Turns out super successful, sells for a bunch of money. And one of my dear friends came up to me and goes, Jay, it's always bothered me that you never gave me a chance to invest. And I don't want to say to him, I went to you first. Right? You blew me off. Now that it's famous and successful and obvious, and I've watched people take the smallest change, the smallest innovation. In the early days of computers, I was one of the first guys to put video on a computer and all these complicated things. I had a friend that I learned so much by example. When people bought computers when they first came out in the 80s, they were $2,500, okay? The only thing you would ever own more expensive would be a car. So he figured if somebody was buying something that expensive in their home, they'd want to put a plastic dust cover over it to protect it. So when we're writing code and figuring out all this stuff, he made plastic dust covers, made some good money. And then when the mouse was added, he goes, okay, I'll make mouse pads. He never had to learn how to use a computer, okay? When the iPhone came out, the guys that made this little plastic case that you spend $15 for that cost 4 cents, okay? Sold $16 billion in accessories. They didn't invent anything, right? You know, how many people jumped onto the pandemic and said, I'll make a piece of plexiglass with a little slot in it so manicurists can still do hands. There's always opportunity, but no one can give you that perseverance. You've got to take that step. For me, I didn't have some great psychological pinning. I had 2 sons when I was very young, and I wanted them to have a better life.
Yeah.
So my back's against the wall. I had no choice. I had to succeed. And you know how I succeeded? By failing 10 times more than anybody else.
Yeah, no, I love it. Right. So before I ask you your last question again, I want to remind people like this is a fantastic book, right? Like future-proofing you. Jay's obviously it's packed with the 12 truths. There's so many different examples that you can sort of dive into. You know, do check it out. You know, what we love, especially on this show, is always getting feedback and sharing that. So if you can take out that magic phone that Jay has in his hand and find a dinosaur somewhere on the screen, you click on it, it's going to pop up a link and you can send us some feedback. So Jay, just before we finish here, it's what is sort of one sort of message you'd like people to take away from the book for anyone who picks this up? What was your hope that they would leave with at the end after reading it?
My hope in reading this is that everybody reading it is at least a little further along in their life than Vin. That Vin had no security blanket. He was an immigrant in the country, no friends, nothing to fall back on. Now, did he date for that year? No. Did he watch TV or go to the game for that year? No. But he was willing to work harder than most people for 1 year in order to live in a manner that most people can't for the rest of his life. And at the end of that year, what kept him going, because it's like a marathon working that hard, I thought he burned out, was the idea that he was going to take the next year off. And not because making $1 million, you can live the rest of your life on it. You can't. But because he was future-proof. He knew whenever he wanted to go back, he could do it again anywhere. Now he lives in Europe. Now he has Fortune 500 clients. It's amazing, the transformation. And I didn't cherry pick, the perfect candidate. I only interviewed one person and talked him into it. Okay. I tricked him into believing that he could do it. And so I hope people realize that they could do it at any age. I have the story in the book of a email that I got that really touched me, and I asked her permission to include it, of a woman who had started a business in her 50s, lost all her money, and decided to commit suicide. And when she was preparing to kill herself, she called her daughter to say goodbye. Her daughter was in her 20s, and her daughter had a reaction that she didn't expect. Her daughter laughed at her, not in a cruel way, but you're killing yourself over money? That's the dumbest thing I ever heard of. And her daughter gave her my first book, Disrupt You. And she was writing to tell me that now she has a successful business and she's happy and life's going. That's what motivates me. Whatever time I have left. When I look what happened in our nation's capital in January, what I saw were thousands of people feeling left out, left behind. The world that they were trained and educated for is gone. And no one's helping people understand that they have the power within them to succeed. I'm not selling you motivational courses. I'm not selling you retreats, masterminds, t-shirts, mugs with my face on. I'm not selling you anything. Matter of fact, if you go to my website, you can get free workbooks to help you get the most out of these books. It's jsamit.com. I work with publishers because they can get the book out. So for the price of a spice latte frappuccino, you can change your life. So, skip Starbucks for a day and become a millionaire. That's all I have to say.
Listen, Jay, it's amazing the velocity of your writing. It's fantastic quality that goes with it, but the mission, that's why you do it, I think, is what resonates the most. So thank you so much for putting your time and energy into helping more people achieve more. And it's a fantastic book, and really encourage everybody to check it out. Thanks very much for joining us on the show.
Thank you. Peace out.